So what is this? So there would have been a perception, or there could have been a perception that you were conflicted. You accept that?
In hindsight, I accept it.
In hindsight, you accept it,
Yes.
based on the objective facts, not that you were conflicted, but the facts that we've been through might have created a perception that you were conflicted.
I've agreed to that.
And
Taking into account the explanations that we had on each items, it's important for me to raise that so the record is clear.
And just looking at those facts, would it have been reasonable to have had that perception, just looking at those facts?
I don't know. I can't comment on that. Hence, I'm saying this matter must be adjudicated on separately. I can't comment on that fact. I'm just saying from my reviewing of this, a perception seems to have been created in hindsight.
You see, Mr. What I want to put to you is that, quite aside from the true facts of whether or not you were biased and you were involved in Sgt Nkosi's attempts to rig this tender, your conduct in continuing to sit on the BAC as a matter of law renders this bid capable of being reviewed and set aside by any losing bidder. And what you have done is you've put the city in a situation where this bid is capable of being set aside by any losing bidder because of your inability to see that the objective facts relating to your relationship to Ngapashe disqualified you from sitting on this bid.
Yes, I completely disagree with you. A thorough supply chain management process was followed in terms of the evaluation and the appointment of this bid. Further to that, an external legal firm played a significant oversight in terms of validating the contents and the facts around the award. In terms of the declaration, I was clear. I've got no interest in Ngapashe. I still have no interest in Ngapashe. I'm not an associate of the director whatsoever. I am an associate of the brother, but that does not make me an associate of the director of Ngapashe. I also confirmed that on signing this declaration, my objectivity was not affected at all. And it's also key to add that the panel-based decision-making process is essential in order to add additional weight to that. So I respectfully disagree with you on that notion.
Did you disclose any of the facts that we've gone through to the independent legal firm?
Which facts?
Becky's brother, Sgt Nkosi, is a close friend and someone who you regard as a brother for life. Sgt Nkosi had been approaching you, trying to get you to rig the bid in favor of his brother's company. While the present bid was pending before the Tshwane Council, you'd also been assisting Sgt Nkosi in relation to a bid that Ngapashe had submitted to another organ of state. During the period in which the present bid was pending before the city, you were in direct communication with Becky Nkosi, the director of Ngapashe, inviting him to submit bids for a different tender. In relation to that other different tender of the city, you'd written to Sgt Nkosi saying, "Have sent the above to Becky. We need to regroup on it." You'd also been involving Sgt Nkosi in a range of matters relating to the affairs of the client department, the TMPD, including processes relating to the payment and termination of private service providers contracting with the department. And in the process, you'd given Sgt Nkosi access to documents between the city and one of the competing bidders in TMPD1, including an invoice that showed the pricing used by that bidder in respect of the city. Did you disclose any one of those 8 facts to the law firm?
Yes, thank you so much.
Sorry, well, the question is, did you disclose any one of those facts to the law firm whose rubber stamp you now want to rely on?
These are not facts, SC, and I can't agree to that as being facts. Because I did not share any sensitive information with Sergeant Nkosi in terms of invoicing. You raised it as the last fact now.
I thought we'd agreed that these were facts, but let's take them one by one so we can actually address them one by one. Becky's brother, Sgt Nkosi, is a close friend and someone who you regard as your brother for life. Is that a fact?
That's a fact.
Did you disclose it to the law firm?
There was no need to disclose that to the law firm.
Yes or no? You can give explanations and theories as to whether there was a need or not. Did you disclose it?
First answer to that is no.
Okay. Well,
Can I
you can give
explain?
your explanations
SC
later. Let's just clarify the position
SC,
in
apologies.
relation to the facts first. You can
Professor,
come back, take
apologies,
each
SC.
one and give your explanation. I just want to establish the facts because you weren't willing to say, when I asked you, did you disclose any of these facts to the lawyer?
My profuse apologies, SC. We're going to get lost in discussion if you're unable to allow me to please expand.
No,
on each.
I want to establish the facts in answer to my question. I just want an answer to the question. Don't want your explanation yet. You can give the explanation later. Let's get the ground facts ready.
SC, that's
So-
that I respectfully request.
Mr. Mnisi, you've just said what Mr. Chaskalson put to you were not facts. Can we just establish the facts? You can, if you then want to explain, and you can take notes on all of them. But let's just establish the facts, please. If at the end of it you want to say, although I say A, B, C, D are facts, here's an explanation I want to give. Let's just get a move on what is fact and what is not, please.
The next fact, Sgt Nkosi had made approaches to you which you understood as approaches that were trying to get you to rig the bid in favor of his brother's company. Is that a fact?
That's what I understood.
So it is a fact that you understood that Sgt Nkosi had been approaching you in an attempt to persuade you to rig the bid in favor of his brother's company.
Okay?
It's a fact. Did you disclose it to the attorneys? Simple yes or no?
Right now, no.
No.
There was no need, but I'll explain later.
You
Sorry,
can talk about need later. He had made 4 different approaches to you in this regard. Is that a fact?
Yes.
Did you disclose it to the attorneys?
No.
While the present bid was pending before the Tshwane Council, you'd also been assisting Sgt Nkosi in relation to a bid that Ngapa Share had submitted to another organ of state. Is that a fact?
Yes.
Did you disclose it to the
No.
attorneys? During the period in which the present bid was pending before the Tshwane Council, you were in direct communication with Becky Nkosi, the director of Ngapa Share, inviting him to submit a bid for a different tender from the Tshwane Council. Is that a
Yes.
fact? Is it
Yes.
a fact?
Yes.
Did you disclose
No.
it to the attorneys? No. In relation to that tender, you had written to Sgt Nkosi saying, have sent the above to Becky, we need to regroup on it. Is that a
Yes.
fact?
You spoke at the same time.
Yes, Commissioner,
thank
apologies.
you.
Yes.
And you didn't disclose this to any
Nope.
attorneys?
No, no, SC.
You had involved Sgt Nkosi in a range of matters relating to the affairs of the client department, the TMPD, and these processes included processes relating to the payment and termination of private service providers contracted by the TMPD. Is that a fact?
It's not a fact.
What is factually incorrect in relation to it?
Sorry, SC, what's factually incorrect is about payment. I involved him in terms of the purchase orders. No involvement whatsoever on payment aspect.
Okay, so if I were to say, including processes relating to purchase orders and the termination of private, you would be happy with
Yes.
that? And you didn't disclose that to any attorneys?
Nope.
And in those processes, through involving Sgt Nkosi, you put him in a position where he got access to documents between the city and one of the competing bidders, including an invoice that shows the pricing used by that competing bidder in relation to the city. Is that a...
It's not a fact. I did not give him any information, nor did I put him in a position to receive that.
So you are suggesting that if you had not consented to Sgt Nkosi intermediating your relationship with Deputy Chief Dlamini, he would still have got the invoice that Gubis issued to the city?
What I'm suggesting is that I did not give him authority at any stage in time to obtain any sensitive information. I'm sure Deputy Chief Dlamini will have to answer it on himself. From my perspective, this is not a fact.
If you had said to Sgt Nkosi at the outset, Sgt Nkosi, you have no business getting involved in any TMPD matters. I will speak to General Dlamini myself please do not approach him. Would he have got access to that invoice which discloses Gubis's pricing to the city?
Chair, I can't comment on what would have happened. The matter that you're putting towards me is that, is this a fact that I enabled him or I gave him information, sensitive information of bidders? And that's not a fact. I'm not going to speculate on what would have happened.
You were aware that Sgt Nkosi had got access to that document?
Afterwards, I was aware, and there's nothing I could do to stop that. He already had that.
Yes, but at the time that you sat in the committee, you knew that Sgt Nkosi, the brother of the Ngapashare director, had got access through the city to the pricing of a competitor in relation to the city.
9 months down the line, I was aware of that.
You were aware of that, yes. Now, you disclosed none of this to any attorney who was expressing a view on the probity of the process. That's common cause.
I've said yes to those issues, except for the last issue that you're saying.
Well, you didn't disclose that to any attorney. Did you say to someone, I didn't facilitate it, but Sgt Nkosi actually got access to a Gubis invoice to the city?
Okay. No, I did not disclose that. I didn't see the need.
I see, yeah. Now, if you want to explain any of that, please feel free.
Okay. I can explain now. Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank
Be
you.
my guest.
The first one is, did I disclose a relationship with Sergeant Nkosi is my friend? Sergeant Nkosi is neither a director of Ngapashare, nor is he a shareholder of the entity. As per the declaration form that's in front of us, it's clear on what you should disclose against. Any friends that I have that have no interest or any association with the firm, there's no need to disclose that. I saw that irrelevant, and there was no need for me to disclose that to the probity teams. Secondly, further to that, the exercise that was undertaken, there was no request for me to disclose that. I had disclosed information of the directors as per the declaration of form interest that the city has. The second matter, you say, Sergeant Nkosi made approaches to me, and I did clarify on the approaches that were there. Firstly, I had insufficient evidence to disclose this to any party because it was clear that he was asking me for compliance. I did suspect, I can agree, that at one point, due to the persistence, it's now resulting to an individual persisting that I go further than that. I had no conclusive evidence. There was nothing for me to declare to any of the property teams. Item number 3, you raised the same issue but on 4 different occasions. Equally, I had no conclusive evidence. There was nothing for me to declare. This was an individual constantly saying, may you please assist with compliance. Hence, there was nothing for me to declare to the probity team. The fourth one is on an assistance on another bidder. I have explained this matter. Assistance that I provide was on a general perspective. Did not interact with any of the returnable documents of the company at hand. Hence, further to that, I expected no financial gain. I had no interest in that. It was just me providing guidance to a friend in general terms to a bid that was open at the time. I did not see the need to disclose that because it doesn't affect any objectivity that might be there on a bid that is currently in question. You refer to direct communications on another bid. That bid was open, and in reference to discussion they had with Sergeant Nkosi, the regrouping clearly meant, if needs be, I'll explain to you the contents of administrative requirements, the mandatory requirements, as well as the evaluation criteria. There's nothing wrong with that. I have given evidence on why that's allowed if individuals do ask you to clarify for that. That ultimately didn't happen. Secondly, they weren't even awarded. I still maintain that I have no interest as a result of that factor, which brings me to conclude that there was nothing necessary for me to declare. The third one is on the Gubis payment. On the Gubis payment, I was clear. Sergeant Nkosi involved himself. I didn't actively say, may you please assist me with mediating this. A phone call was given to me and had a discussion. Hence, from that perspective, I did not actively encourage him to assist me in terms of dealing with that matter at hand. I did, however, admit, Chair, that in hindsight, on this matter, I should have requested for a number. And on this, I should have requested for a number so that I'm able to deal directly with the Deputy Chief Dlamini. On the second aspect you have raised on the Gubis payment on termination, this was clear. I asked for his number afterwards, and I subsequently took the matter up with the General directly. There was no further interaction with Sergeant Nkosi in reference to the termination letter. In hindsight, I had also agreed that this is an issue that could have resulted in a problem for me, and I should have got the details directly, and I subsequently received those. Hence, from my perspective, there's nothing to declare. I still have no interest, and my objectivity would not have been impaired whatsoever. The last one that you had raised, in terms of giving him access to information, I disagreed with this. It's not a fact. There's no single instance from my perspective where I shared any sensitive documentation with him. The termination letter, like I said, was general. We've seen that. There's nothing sensitive about that. The service provider had already received it. And from my perspective, he would have got no advantage, firstly. Nor would his brother's company would have gotten advantage, purely taking into account that they're not even a bidder who would be eligible to be allocated any ad hoc related services work. Thanks, SC.
So, Mr. Mnisi, if this whole process is repeated next year in another bid, and all of these facts were to happen again, would you still sit on the BAC and not make any disclosure on your interest form?
In hindsight, I did agree that there is a perception of conflict having existed. Firstly, during this exercise, I've learned a lot and I've identified my mistakes and errors. I can assure you, errors of this nature will never reoccur in the near future. However, if they do reoccur, a perception is there, and I would not sit in that committee. Like I said, this is a perception issue that would still have been evaluated, because I'm saying, as I speak at that point in time, I've got no interest and my objectivity wouldn't have been impaired. I still maintain that. However, I've seen a lot of shortcomings and shortfalls and gaps within the conduct, and I would put systems in place to improve that moving forward.
Well, my question was first, would you sit on the BAC again? Yes or no?
Okay.
If all of these facts are repeated and you now are called to a BAC meeting against that background, would you sit on the BAC?
The first
Yes or no? Yes or no? Just simple yes or no.
Okay, no.
No. Okay.
Me
Thank
expanding further on that, SC, is that this would never happen again. So if we speculate what would happen in the future, it's a bit difficult for me to concur with. I can explain what happened, but in the future,
I'm
this would
satisfied
never
with your
occur
answer. No, you wouldn't. I appreciate that. Mr. Mnisi, you'll be relieved, as I am, to hear that I have no further questions.
Thank you, SC.
Mr. Mnisi,
Chair.
when Mr. Chaskalson engaged you on the grounds for cancelling TMPD3, you dealt with what you called an irregularity that related to the bid specification requirement of firearm licenses. Is that correct?
It was one of the issues that...
No, I'm just focusing on this one, not the rest.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. And do you accept that the effect of the BAC's resolution in relation to this ground of cancellation was to undo a stage as early as the bid specification? Because you are effectively saying the bid specification ought not to have been framed like this, and therefore the tender document itself ought not to have been framed in this manner. So do you agree that your resolution as the BAC was effectively to undo a stage as early as the bid specification?
I agree. It was one of those reasons, Commissioner.
Yes. Now, can you show us where the BAC derives the power from to invalidate an entire tender process based on its view of shortcomings in the bid specification?
Chair, this particular matter was not invalidated by the BAC. The BEC brought a report with these resolutions already there that the tender must be cancelled. The BAC assessed and found additional matters which were added, and it's the three requirements that you just made reference to.
I'm asking you
now.
about the power. Can you just say, I may be wrong, as you seem to be suggesting, that it was the BAC that effectively, in fact, you've already agreed that it was the BAC that effectively upended the process going back to the bid specification. So what I'm saying is, show us where the power the BAC has to do that?
The BAC has power to recommend. The BAC doesn't have power to cancel. They have the power to recommend, and the accounting officer has the power to cancel. He has the authority not to agree to the recommendation that the BAC has, so they don't have that power.
Okay, where does the BAC, because the BAC can only make a recommendation that is based on a power that exists. So whether the power lay with the BAC or the accounting officer, show us where that power is.
Within this pack, it's not here.
A power, it does not need to be in this pack. Where does the power come from for an entire tender process to be undone from a stage as early as the bid specification? Where does that power come from?
The city manager delegates that in the form of appointment letters when he's delegating his powers to the BAC.
No, the municipal manager can only delegate powers that she herself has. So if you say that this is a power that rests on the accounting officer, the municipal manager, show me where that power comes from.
I don't have that information with me at present offhand, Chair. I will have to come back to you on that. But I can confirm to you that that power is by law rests with the city manager. He delegates that to the BAC through a letter when he appoints
You
members.
wouldn't know, you wouldn't be in a position to say by law that power vests in. If, as you've just said, you do not know where this comes from, would you?
Chair, maybe I'm misunderstanding you. Maybe I'm not.
So are you
understanding. Can
saying,
please
okay,
rephrase?
let me ask the question differently. Are you saying, as a matter of fact, if not law, the municipal manager does have the power to undo a tender process right from the start, the bid specification stage, based on shortcomings at that stage, undo it right at the tail end? Are you saying the the municipal manager, has that power?
He has the powers, Chair.
Based on shortcomings in the bid specification?
Chair, he
I'm
does have those powers.
I'm specific.
Yes, he does have those powers. If he picks up this is an anomaly that will lead to irregularities, he does have those powers.
I'm just thinking, the bid process is a very expensive process for the tenderers. I would imagine there's a lot of expense, in fact, even for the municipality itself, not only in monetary terms, but also in terms of the person hours that have to be used to run this entire process from the beginning all the way to the end. So are you saying the municipal manager can just sit by and say, right at the tail end, I may undo all of this based on the fact that the bid specification ought not to have provided in this manner?
He is the accounting officer, he has those powers. As long as he satisfies himself, he's got a duty to satisfy himself as well, with the reasons behind that, and he can take a decision of that. So by virtue of being an accounting officer, he does have those powers.
Do you agree though that a sensible way would be for the municipal manager to be in the know right from the beginning as to what the tender entails? Because if that were to be the position, this strange process would be obviated. The municipal manager would be able to pronounce right at the beginning and say, no, we can't have a tender process along these lines because there's everything wrong with a bid specification.
Chair, you will remember an advert is signed off by the accounting officer. Before any advert goes out, that's a specification. So at that point in time, if he wants, he could request a specific document and say, I want to see the contents of this specification. He has that authority and he can see that at that point.
Thank you very much for that response. Then surely the accounting officer cannot having approved the bid specification, which finds its way into the tender document itself, cannot, having approved it at the tail end, say, oh, by the way, I've since changed my mind, and now I'm saying there was everything wrong with the bid specification. Surely that cannot be, because, as you say, the municipal manager will already have signed off on that document. They can't change their mind. Surely not.
Chair, I respectfully disagree with you. He is the accounting officer. We have to analyze the cost of compliance. In those terms, compliance is key. And if any irregularities amount, if there's irregular expenditure mounting this tender, and the accounting officer would have been alarmed that there is an issue on the specifications, he will be held accountable. So the powers are with him, he can decide.
Signing off on that document right at the beginning, even before entities begin to put in bids, is an indication that the accounting officer is saying there is nothing wrong with this document. So the accounting officer is already happy that there are no irregularities. Otherwise, what's the point of the accounting officer signing off at the beginning? It would be pointless. So there's already a pronouncement on the existence or otherwise of irregularities. And in this instance, by signing off, the accounting officer is saying there are no irregularities. Surely, Mr. Mnisi.
Chair, I agree with you on that perspective. He would signed it off. He might not have picked up any irregularities. And just to add practically how it happens, these are delegated functions. So we rely on the work that the bid specification committee would have done. In practice, he does not request to review each terms of reference of the tender document, nor do I request that. We rely on the work of the BSC, the bid specification
but it
committee.
goes beyond the bid. It goes beyond the bid specification committee. It goes to the person who actually takes the final decisions on these matters, and that person takes a decision right at the beginning and says everything is in order here. That's the last point on that one, but you may comment. I'll move on.
Chair, the accounting officer is ultimately responsible for the procurement environment of the city. He's ultimately responsible for ensuring that bid specifications are in place. The functions are delegated. He trusts the work of the BSC as a result of them being constituted by members of the department, specialists within supply chain management. I rely on their work as well. At the tail end of that process, if we identify an irregularity, we can't ignore that, even though we had signed on it previously. So the accounting officer, on the recommendations of BAC, then takes that decision after analyzing that. It's a sore point to experience, Chair, but it's necessary in order to avoid irregular expenditure. I wouldn't want irregular expenditure to be recovered for me as a result of overlooking a matter of this nature. I can recommend to the accounting officer, he still has the duty to evaluate those reasons, concur or refer them back. In this instance, he concurred with the reasons, and he approved.
Just one. There's a fancy Latin term, Mr. Mnisi, that says that an organ of state cannot revisit their decision if they are functus officio, which means basically that once an organ of state has taken, which would be the accounting officer here, once an organ of state has taken a decision on something, they do not have the power to revisit that decision. They would have to go elsewhere, court to be specific, to say, oh, by the way, I made a mistake by signing off on that document. Court, can you please set it aside? On what you are saying, which is the accounting officer is assisted by all the actors at these various stages and can then take a decision at the tail end, surely that has nothing to do with what the accounting officer has already signed off on. It will be whatever happens in accordance with what the accounting officer has already signed off on. Cannot revisit the decision on that aspect. Do you want to comment?
With your permission, yes, please, Chair. Firstly, in terms of the difficult legal terms that you had raised, I'm not aware of them. And of course, I'll request my legal team to help me clarify that if needs be. However, on the second aspect, I can confirm, I can comment on that the procurement
Yes,
process,
yes, yes.
Chairperson, is looked at holistically. Even if you pick up an error from the beginning of the process, you have a duty to raise that. If it's an error that's valid, that might lead to irregularity, you can't ignore that. We do take a decision to cancel that bid. We then leave that onus on any supplier who says, no, but you shouldn't have canceled this bid, because we make that public as well. Bidders ask us what happened on this, we'll inform them this was canceled because of these reasons. If a bidder chooses to take the city to court, we'll then deal with it at that stage. That's the process that we follow at the city from a practical perspective.
I asked my question about an empowering prescript without the knowledge of what you later told us, which is that the accounting officer signs off right at the beginning. Let me repeat my question, but adding to it what you told us. Is there any prescript that entitles the municipal manager to revisit and alter a decision on the bid specification? Can the municipality in law undo that decision? Is there a specific prescript that you can show us in that regard?
I think I can refer you to the city supply chain management policy.
Yes.
On that policy, it's clause 11, which terms evaluation of bids, clause 7.
Which says what? Because the very reference to evaluation does not seem to have anything to do with the municipal manager undoing the bid specification.
That clause,
You are talking evaluation.
that clause guides the cancellation of bids. In terms of cancellation of bids,
That still says nothing about the power of the municipal manager to undo a bid specification.
Chair, like I said, the accounting officer is responsible for managing the city in all respects. He
Okay.
has the powers to ensure
Let's leave it. I'm not done, but Commissioner Baloyi wants to engage you on this.
Yes. The city's SCM policy